most people today do not have a shortage of options. They have too many goals, too many projects, too many messages, too many tabs open in the browser, and too many tabs open in the mind. We are encouraged to do more, learn more, build more, post more, earn more, and never miss an opportunity. So we assume success must come from adding. But Steve Jobs' career suggests something more uncomfortable. Sometimes progress begins when you remove. When Jobs returned to Apple in the late 1990s, the company did not mainly suffer from a lack of ideas. It had products, projects, talented people, and years of history. What it lacked was clarity. The company was trying to be too many things at once. One of the most important changes associated with Jobs' return was not the creation of another 100 projects. It was the decision to stop doing many of them. That is the deeper meaning of focus. Focus is not simply staring harder at your work. It is deciding what deserves your limited attention, then having the courage to reject what does not. And that may be one of the most useful lessons Steve Jobs' complicated career can offer us. There is a strange trap hidden inside ambition. At the beginning, ambition feels like energy. You want to learn everything, build everything, try everything. A new idea appears, and you say yes. Another opportunity arrives, and you say yes again. Soon, you have 5 goals, 6 unfinished projects, 3 new skills you are trying to learn, a phone full of notifications, and a mind that never completely arrives anywhere. The problem is not that these things are all bad. The problem is that attention is limited. Every yes takes time. Every unfinished project occupies mental space. Steve Jobs was not a perfect model of calm simplicity. His career included conflict, failed products, difficult relationships, and moments when his judgment was challenged. That matters because the lesson becomes more useful when we stop pretending successful people were perfect from the beginnings. Later, some of his most important decisions showed what concentrated attention could do. The practical lesson is simple, but not easy. Every yes consumes part of your life. So before asking, "Can I do this?" ask a harder question. Is this important enough to deserve what it will take away from everything else? Apple began in the 1970s around the complementary strengths of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, with Ron Wayne briefly joining them at the start. Wozniak was the exceptional engineer behind the early Apple computer designs. Jobs had a strong instinct for turning technology into something that could be presented, packaged, and sold as a product. The Apple II, introduced in 1977, became the machine that helped turn Apple from a small startup into a major personal computer company. What matters for our story is not just that Apple made computers. It is the direction Jobs became drawn toward. He cared intensely about the complete experience of a product, what it looked like, how it felt, how a person interacted with it, and whether unnecessary complexity could be hidden from the user. That instinct became especially visible in the Macintosh era. The Macintosh, introduced in 1984, brought a graphical interface and mouse-driven interaction to a much broader personal computing audience. It did not emerge from one person. It came from a team of engineers, designers, programmers, managers, and others, building on ideas that had developed across the computer industry, including work at Xerox PARC. But Jobs pushed hard for the idea that powerful technology should feel approachable. That is an important distinction. Simplicity is not the absence of sophistication. Often, simplicity is sophistication that someone else has worked hard to organize for you. Yet Apple's early success also increased ambition, pressure, and internal tension. Jobs' influence grew, but so did conflict over management and direction. And ambition, when it is not disciplined, can create the same problem in a company that it creates in a person. Too many competing priorities. Too much friction. Not enough shared clarity. The story of focus was not finished. In some ways, it had barely begun. By 1985, the relationship between Jobs, Apple's leadership, and the board had deteriorated badly. It is often summarized with one dramatic sentence: Steve Jobs was fired from the company he founded. The reality was more complicated. There were serious disagreements over strategy and management. CEO John Sculley reduced Jobs' operational authority. Jobs attempted to regain power. The board backed Sculley. By September, Jobs resigned from Apple. For a man whose identity had become deeply connected with the company he helped build, this was a major rupture. But here is the part that matters to us. Losing his position did not remove his ability to create. A title can disappear. A company can reject you. A plan can fail. But your skills, judgment, lessons, and questions can travel with you. Failure also has a brutal way of narrowing attention. When the old path closes, you are forced to ask what remains. What do I actually know how to do? What do I still care enough to build? What is worth starting again? Jobs did not respond by disappearing. He started another computer company. And he entered another field that, at first, looked far removed from the personal computers that had made him famous. Those years outside Apple would become essential to understanding the person who eventually returned. Jobs founded NeXT after leaving Apple. NeXT built technologically advanced computers and software, but its hardware business struggled in the market. The machines were expensive, and the company eventually shifted away from hardware and focused on software. That matters because NeXT was not a clean, immediate success story. It was experimentation, difficulty, adaptation, and persistence. At the same time, Jobs bought the computer division that became Pixar in 1986. Pixar also did not instantly become the entertainment giant people remember today. It developed technology, made short films and commercial work, and gradually moved toward feature animation. In 1995, Toy Story became the first fully computer-animated feature film and a landmark success. During those years, Jobs was exposed to computer hardware, operating systems, software development, design, animation, storytelling, creative teams, and business partnerships. Different industries, different problems, different kinds of talent. This is where we need to correct a common misunderstanding about focus. Focus does not mean you must do only one thing for your entire life. A focused life can contain different seasons. The question is whether you are truly present in the season you are in. There are times to explore, learn, build, and cut away what no longer works. NeXT's hardware struggle did not make the whole experience worthless. Its software became highly important later. Pixar's path was not obvious from the beginning, but the company grew into a major creative force through the work of people such as Ed Catmull, John Lasseter, and many others. Focus is not always choosing one narrow identity. Sometimes it is choosing to give serious attention to the work in front of you, learning deeply enough that the lessons become useful somewhere you cannot yet see. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. Its product strategy had become confusing. The company had too many overlapping offerings and lacked a clear direction. It was losing money, and its future was uncertain. Then Apple acquired NeXT. That deal brought NeXT's technology into Apple and brought Steve Jobs back to the company, first as an advisor and then, in 1997, as interim chief executive. This is where the story becomes especially useful. Jobs did not return to a clean company, waiting for one brilliant product. He returned to complexity. Apple had talented people. It had technology. It had a famous brand. It had ideas. But those resources were scattered. Jobs and the leadership team began cutting projects and simplifying the product strategy. One famous result was a much smaller matrix of core Mac products, consumer and professional machines, in desktop and portable form. In plain language, Apple stopped trying to make a computer for every imaginable variation of customer. It chose a few things to do well. That sounds obvious after the fact. It is not obvious when real products, teams, budgets, and careers are attached to what must be cut. This is why saying no is difficult. Removing a project does not feel like strategy when you are emotionally attached to it. It feels like loss. But a company with limited people and money cannot treat every idea as a priority. Neither can a human being. Apple's recovery did not happen because the company suddenly learned how to do everything better. First, it became clearer about what it would no longer do. That created room. Room for attention. Room for better execution. Room for a smaller number of products to matter more. And sometimes that is what a comeback looks like. Not expansion. Reduction. Now bring this into your own life. Why is saying no so hard? Because every no seems to carry a risk. What if this was the opportunity? What if I disappoint someone? What if everyone else moves ahead? What if I choose one path and discover the other path was better? What if I lose money? What if I waste my potential? So we protect ourselves by keeping everything open. 5 business ideas. 3 social platforms. 20 saved courses. 10 goals for the year. A long list of projects that are technically alive but never receive enough energy to become excellent. Weak priorities say, everything matters. Strong priorities say, this matters more. That difference changes behavior. If one business is your main goal, maybe 4 side businesses need to wait. If one course directly supports your work, maybe you finish it before buying another. If one YouTube channel has momentum, maybe you stop dividing your best creative hours across 5. If important work requires concentration, maybe 2 protected hours matter more than instant availability. Saying no is not automatically wise. You can reject the wrong things. You can become too rigid. But without the ability to say no, your priorities are only wishes. A real priority has consequences. It changes your calendar. It changes what you ignore. It changes what you postpone. And sometimes it changes which opportunities you deliberately allow to pass. The iMac arrived in 1998 as one of the clearest symbols of Apple's renewed direction. Later came the iPod, introduced in 2001, and the iTunes ecosystem that made managing and buying digital music easier for large numbers of people. In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone, combining a phone, an iPod-style media experience, and internet communication in one device. It is tempting to tell this history as the story of one genius inventing everything. That would be false. Apple's products were built by large teams of engineers, designers, software developers, operations specialists, marketers, executives, manufacturing partners, and many others. Jobs' role was important, but importance is not the same as sole authorship. The more useful lesson is about direction. Apple repeatedly tried to take complicated technology and present it through a simpler experience. And simplicity is hard. To remove buttons, options, steps, features, or product variations, you first have to understand what the user actually needs. You have to decide what deserves to remain. That requires judgment. A cluttered plan can hide confusion because it contains everything. A simple plan exposes your thinking because it forces you to choose. Great leadership often means absorbing complexity, so other people do not have to experience all of it. That principle applies beyond technology. A good teacher makes a difficult idea understandable. A good manager turns chaos into clear priorities. A good creator removes what weakens the final work. A good life is not necessarily a life with fewer possibilities. It is a life in which possibilities have been arranged around what matters most. Today, the challenge is not only what we choose. It is what constantly chooses us. A notification chooses us. An email chooses us. A trending video chooses us. A new business idea chooses us. Someone else's success appears on a screen, and suddenly their goal becomes our goal for the next 20 minutes. We can be busy from morning until night and still feel strangely unchanged. That happens when effort is divided across too many directions. Imagine sunlight spread across your skin. It feels warm. Now imagine light concentrated through a lens. The same energy becomes far more intense. Attention works in a similar way. Scattered attention can produce activity. Concentrated attention can produce progress. You cannot eliminate every distraction forever, but you can recognize the cost of switching constantly between tasks and priorities. Apple's simplification worked because resources that had been spread thin could be concentrated. Your life has resources too: time, energy, money, patience, and creative attention. When all of them are fragmented, even a talented person can look ineffective. So the next time you feel you need more motivation, consider another possibility. Maybe you do not need more energy. Maybe you need fewer directions. Here is a practical way to use this lesson. 3 questions. The first is, what matters most right now? Not forever. Right now. Your answer may change with the season of your life. Maybe your most important goal is building stable income. Maybe it is finishing a degree. Maybe it is recovering your health. Maybe it is completing one product. Maybe it is repairing a relationship. The point is to choose something concrete enough to guide decisions. The second question is, what am I doing that does not support it? Look at your calendar, your spending, your half-finished projects, and obligations you accepted months ago but never reconsidered. Some things are necessary even if they do not directly support your main goal. Life includes responsibilities. But many activities remain simply because you never decided to remove them. The third question is the hardest. What am I willing to say no to? This is the test. If your priority eliminates nothing, it may not be a priority. Suppose you say your main goal is to grow one business, but every week you begin a new business model. Suppose you say your goal is to write a book, but your best hours disappear into messages and meetings. Suppose you say your goal is to learn one valuable skill, but you keep jumping to a different course whenever the current one becomes difficult. Focus becomes real when it survives boredom, when it survives new opportunities, when it survives the emotional discomfort of closing a door. You do not need to say no forever. Sometimes not now is enough to protect what matters now. There is another side to this lesson. Focus can become unhealthy when people confuse it with obsession at any cost. Steve Jobs was a complicated human being. Accounts of his management style include substantial criticism. He could be demanding, confrontational, and difficult to work with. We should not hide that simply because some of the products associated with his leadership became enormously successful. The purpose of studying a successful person is not to copy the entire person. You can learn from someone without turning them into a hero. Focus does not mean ignoring your family. It does not mean sacrificing your health until your body forces you to stop. It does not mean treating people badly because you believe the mission is important. It does not mean refusing to rest. And it does not mean staying loyal to a plan after reality has clearly changed. In fact, NeXT itself offers a useful example. Its hardware strategy struggled, and the company eventually shifted towards software. Focus is not stubbornly doing the same thing forever. Focus is staying clear about the deeper objective while remaining willing to change the method. Discipline without reflection becomes rigidity. Ambition without humanity becomes damage. The lesson worth keeping is not intensity for its own sake. It is deliberate attention. Maybe you are listening to this while feeling behind. You have unfinished plans, financial pressure, too many responsibilities, a business that has not worked yet, a career that feels uncertain, a phone full of ideas and a mind full of guilt because you cannot seem to make progress on all of them. Your instinct may be to search for something new, a new system, a new course, a new side hustle, a new routine, a new plan that will finally make everything fit. But maybe your comeback does not begin with something new. Maybe it begins with removal. Remove the project you no longer believe in. Remove the commitment you accepted only because you were afraid to disappoint someone. Remove the platform that consumes time, but produces no meaningful result. Remove the habit of changing goals every time progress becomes slow. Remove the expectation that you must become 5 different people at once. Apple's recovery in the late 1990s was not caused by simplification alone. Many factors mattered: talented teams, technology from NeXT, better products, design, execution, partnerships, leadership, and changing markets. But simplification created a clearer field on which those strengths could work. That is the part you can borrow. Not Steve Jobs' personality, not Apple's exact strategy, not someone else's definition of success. Just the principle. Protect your attention. Because attention is where your life is being spent. 1 hour at a time. We live in a world that constantly asks one question. What else can you add? Another goal. Another feature. Another source of income. Another skill. Another commitment. Another reason to stay busy. Steve Jobs' career gives us a different question. What can you remove? The early Apple years showed the power of turning complex technology into a clearer experience. His departure from Apple showed that success does not protect anyone from failure. NeXT showed that a difficult path can still produce valuable technology and lessons. Pixar showed what can happen when creative and technical people are given time to build something new. And Jobs' return to Apple showed the strategic power of concentrating a company around fewer priorities. None of this means your life should become small. It means your attention should become intentional. One meaningful goal can outweigh 10 vague ambitions. One clear direction can be more valuable than constant motion. One difficult no can protect a year of important work. And one finished thing can change your confidence more than 100 exciting beginnings. Focus is not about shrinking your life. It is about making room for what matters most. Subscribe for more lessons drawn from the lives, failures, decisions, and turning points of remarkable people. The goal is not to copy their lives, but to think more clearly about your own.